Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to This Is My Brave. We're all very happy to be here with you today. With me today, I have Cameron and Don from One Lane Bridge, and we're going to start you guys off with a tune.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. How about another round of applause for Barbara and her accompaniers? I'm Jennifer Marshall, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the co-founder and executive director of This Is My Brave, and we're so grateful for you to take this afternoon to be with us to hear these incredible stories. I myself live with type 1 bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed 13 and a half years ago, and it was after an incident, an episode that came kind of out of nowhere for me, and after a week of no sleep. So When it happened again 2 weeks later on Christmas Day, we knew, my family, that it was something serious and started pursuing, treatment. From there, I was able to get through a really hard, horrible, dark year of clinical depression that culminated in suicidal thoughts. And then during the years I was having my children, I actually experienced 2 more episodes of mania and psychosis and had to be hospitalized both times, taken to the hospital in handcuffs by police officers. And the most recent episode of mine was not too long ago. In August of 2017, our organization suffered a tremendous loss. My co-founder, Anne-Marie Ames, passed away from a heart attack. And so I was in the hospital again. Having gone through all that, I learned a lot. And one of the things that helped me to get through the darkness of feeling like it was never going to get better, mainly the thing that helped me, was finding stories from other people who had made it through. They were writing online, and they inspired me to write my story online. So I started a blog, and I wrote anonymously for a year and a half under the blog title Bipolar Mom Life. And I wrote about managing my illness, raising my kids, and just life in general. And then an editor found my writing, and she said, "We love what you're writing about. Will you write for us? And we'll pay you." And I said yes. And then I was ready at that point, my first paid writing job, to put my name on my writing and be proud of my story. And I put it out there, and they published it on the homepage of AOL. And a lot of people who didn't know what I had gone through reached out to me that day. I was flooded with messages of people saying, "Thank you for sharing your story, because I've gone through something similar." It was that I call it brave multiplying brave. That effect 6 months later led me to start this organization. If Anne-Marie wouldn't have joined me when I said, "I'm doing this big thing, I'm going to put it out there on Kickstarter, I need help, will you join me?" And she said, "Yes, I believe in this." And if she wouldn't have, I don't know if we'd all be here today. I loved working with her, and I miss her every day. But what keeps me going, and actually I have to mention too, this is a very special day, because today would have been her 61st birthday. So we are gathering together on a day that is very special to me, and it's significant that this is the first show of our spring season. And I know that she's smiling down with pride, and that's what keeps me going, is knowing that these stories are so inspiring, and you may even see a piece of yourself in these stories that are going to be shared on stage from our brave storytellers. And if you do, I encourage you to check out our website. At the bottom, there's a screening link. We have a partnership with Mental Health America where you can go online and take a free and confidential screening to see if you might be going through one of these things. You can take the information to your provider. So please check that out. We have a lot of exciting things as an organization going on. We just shot a short documentary film that we will be putting out on our website this May, in the middle of May 18th. So please check that out. You can host a screening in your community or just watch it at home. We'll have some resources available online as well. And we are launching a college pilot program this year, so in Boston. So we're really excited about that. And, we will continue to do this work until there's no longer a need. We like to say that This Is My Brave exists so that one day we'll live in a world where we don't have to call it brave for talking openly about mental illness. We'll just call it talking. And so I'm going to stop talking and go on with the show. I'd like to introduce our fabulous co-producer, Phila Hoops, and she's going to kick us off today. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. This has been a wonderful experience. So, good day all. I'm Phila Hoops, one of the 2 co-producers of today's show, and I would like to welcome you all and thank you for being here. You are all helping to change the conversation around mental illness and mental health, and breaking the stigma and making Baltimore a more caring and compassionate place. So thank you. Thank you all. And first, I want to thank our national sponsors for 2019, Janssen Neurosciences, Alkermes, and Sage Therapeutics, and our generous local sponsors, Greenbrook TMS Neuro Health Centers, So What Else Can We Do to Help? I love that name, and the Maryland Foundation for Psychiatry. Our local sponsors have tables in the lobby. Please stop by and say hello and gather some of their information and learn what they're doing. I also want to give special thanks to the amazing people who have provided their time and energy to make this show possible. Michelle Wojciechowski, my co-producer, who has brought this event to the eyes of the media, and she has done so much more. This event would not have been possible without her. Our show photographer, Tracy Brooks, and our videographer, Lucarelli Studios. Barbara Vander Vossen, our amazing singer, and her band, and her powerful interpretation of Sarah Bareilles' Brave. Nathaniel Korn and Rissa Miller of Balance Photography, who did the headshots that are in your program. Head Graphics, who gave us an incredible discount on printing those programs and the poster out in front. Actify Neurotherapies for a most generous donation. Robin Kushner of Planet Soul, a community education center and a budding school in the making, who gave us a wonderful welcoming venue for our cast party and for our rehearsals. Girls from the Mount DeSales Mental Health Awareness Club, who have been most supportive and enthusiastic since day one, even before this show was actually off the ground. And I just want to thank them for their wonderful energy. They're ushering today. And of course, Notre Dame of Maryland University, this beautiful space, and they have provided us every support service we could possibly have wanted, as well as their most skilled and most gracious sound technician, Sean Newsom, who has responded with grace and skill to all our logistical questions. All of these people have made this show possible, and our deepest gratitude goes out to all of them. So how did tonight's event come about? Well, like many Brave shows, the seed was planted last year. I attended the 2018 show and was so deeply moved by the courageous men and women who stood up to share their healing journeys. And one woman in particular, whose story in so many ways replicated or resembled elements of my own, that I came away rather overwhelmed and inspired and empowered, and I knew that I needed to support this movement. So I signed up for the mailing list, and when they reached out for producers, I leaped, and that's how it works. Each of our cast members is stepping up to share their stories in the hopes that it will spark new understanding and give new hope or open a new door for one or more people who may be struggling for their own mental health journey, or for a new direction in their life, or for a new inspiration. Some of us have found a better life through medication, some of us through therapy, some of us through mindfulness techniques, or a combination of all of the above. There is no magical one-size-fits-all solution. The important thing is to believe in yourself and not stop reaching out until you have found the path that works for you. And with that, I will turn over the mic to my co-producer, Michelle Wojciechowski, and she will be our MC for today's show. Michelle.
Well, I welcome you again, but I think that's happened a couple times already. But I'm going to welcome you anyway. Welcome to This Is My Brave Baltimore 2019. The would like to thank everyone for coming today to witness Baltimore shine a light on mental health issues to end the stigma. I got involved in this show with Phila, whom I've known for many years, when she asked for a co-producer on Facebook. I said to my husband, well, I've never co-produced a show, and I'm all about getting rid of the stigma of mental health issues, so I'll try it. And look at it this way, if I hate it, I'll never have to do it again. Luckily, I didn't hate it. In fact, it's been an incredible ride. It's been such a blast. I've gotten to meet and connect with this awesome cast whom you'll see this afternoon, and it just has been an amazing journey that we've all gone on. Before we get started, I've got a few housekeeping items. Everyone should have received a program when you checked in or entered the theater. Inside, you'll find info on all of our fabulous cast members and sponsors, so be sure to get one if you haven't already. Please take out your cell phones. I'll wait. I'm not going to ask you to turn them off. Actually, just turn them to silent. But we're really a social organization, and we're all about, take photos, take selfies, video clips, post them on social media. We're all about that. We ask that you use the hashtags, #LiveBrave or #StorytellingSavesLives. Again, that's Live Brave or Storytelling Saves Lives. What you're about to experience defines what it means to live brave. And we need your help to tell the world that we're here and that they can learn what it means to live brave as well. So share away. Our volunteers will do the best they can to retweet, re-Instagram. It says regram here. I've never heard of that, but, I'm old. We want to get as much reach for all of this as possible. We are about to take you on a journey. You'll laugh. You'll cry. You'll be enlightened and we hope inspired. Our hope is that you'll leave with a transformed perception of mental health struggles thanks to the bravery of our cast members. This is the reality. 1 in 5 Americans lives with a diagnosable mental health disorder. But because we don't talk about this, we don't talk enough about mental health struggles, people oftentimes suffer in silence and they don't get the help they need, the help that could completely change their lives. And that's a big part of why we're doing this show today. There's nothing embarrassing about this. Well, maybe when you see my stand-up comedy routine, it'll all change. But getting rid of the stigma, it starts tonight, and it starts right on this stage. We're shining light on mental health to show the world that we're your colleagues, your neighbors, your religious leaders, your coworkers, your community members, and we're your friends. We hope that through our storytelling, you will better understand mental illness and will be able to be supportive of those in your life who may experience it. Perhaps you'll be inspired to share your own story, because it's when we share our stories that we open up this conversation. And like I've said a couple times, storytelling really does save lives. Now I'd like to introduce you to the cast of This Is My Brave Baltimore 2019. Thank you so much for coming, and we're getting started now.
And now, I'd like to introduce our first speaker and our only humorist for this evening, Michelle Wojciechowski, who is a published author, a stand-up comic, and the life of the party. Michelle.
No pressure. So as Phyllis said, I'm Michelle. I also go by Wojo, which does not stand for Wojo, it's from Barney Miller. It stands for Wojciechowski, like where's your house key? And I live with panic disorder. I had my first panic attack when I was 18 years old, and I'm surprised it didn't happen so much sooner in my life, like in kindergarten. Because when the teacher goes around and gives out the little pieces of paper for you to learn how to print your last name, mine was this long. If that wasn't enough to send me into a panic attack, I don't know what will. But it's funny, I had my first panic attack. I know exactly where I was standing, and I'll tell you, I remember it well. because they always say you never forget your first. I was with a friend of mine, and we were on our college campus right next door at what was then Loyola College, and I had no idea it was happening to me. People have asked me, well, what's a panic attack feel like? Here's the best way I can describe it. You know how you're driving on the road, and an idiot, because we're all good drivers here, right? An idiot nearly hits you with his or her car, and you get that rush of adrenaline to your chest, and you get sweaty and shaky, and you get really scared for a minute. It's also known as the fight or flight response, and that is what a panic attack is. I didn't know what was happening, so my friend said to me, "Are you okay?" And because I was a smart and responsible 18-year-old, I lied, and I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Let's just go get our books for next semester." Because I didn't get the feeling that I was having a heart attack. I just got really scared. And when you're 18, you can't really turn to your friend and say, "Yeah, I'm not okay. You know, for some completely inexplicable reason, I am suddenly petrified," because they're not going to get it. I remember when I was growing up, I was called a nervous child. This is what, you know, when God was a boy, this is how they described it. I'm not that old. Wow, there are lights on now. All right, baby, thank you. And I remember this one instance in which my mom had taken me to a doctor, and, you know, back then, they had these really imposing ceiling-to-floor bookcases, and the books were just crammed in there. They had this huge cherry desk. And the doctor leaning over the desk and screaming at my mother, "Why did you raise such a nervous child?" And that really worked for me. That just was fantastic. Made me calm as anything. He's dead now. Oh, we didn't kill him. He was just old as Methuselah then, so I'm assuming he's dead now. I saw a therapist one time who said to me, "You know, you have to get to learn about Amy." And I thought, come on, Amy? I'm paying you already. Like, why do I have to learn Amy? She said, "No, Amy G. Dalla. It's how you learn to spell amygdala." The amygdala, in case you do not know, which I did not, is the part of the brain that responds when you get scared. She said, so, you know, when you have a panic attack, Michelle, your amygdala is lighting up like a slot machine in Vegas. So I've just determined you can't see it because of all the hair. But panic, actually, and this is pretty interesting, I found this out. Therapy is useful for many scientific discoveries. I discovered that panic actually comes from our ancestors. And not just, you know, my grandmother and my great-grandmother and all that, but actually cavemen and cavewomen. And they had the fight or flight response because they had to be aware. They had to be aware all the time, you know, because they had to be able to run if they were chased by, say, lions or tigers or bears. Thank you. And I looked at my therapist and I said, "You know I grew up in Baltimore City, right? I mean, my chances of having to flee from a lion or tiger or bear," thank you, you know, it's pretty nil. But there is one really good thing about anxiety and panic. It is completely dedicated to you. It is better than the best spouse, the best boyfriend, the best girlfriend, because wherever you go, anxiety wants to be right there with you. You go to bed, anxiety's like, "Here I am. I'm just going out with my friends." Panic's like, "Whoa, I'm here." And you know, at some point you just want to say, "Dude, you're too clingy. Stop. Give me some space." My gosh. But panic disorder is a little bit different from anxiety disorder. Panic disorder is even more fantastic to have, she says sarcastically, because you can have a panic attack anytime for no reason. Like, you're not even thinking about, oh my gosh, what if this and what if that? No, you're just sitting at Denny's 2 o'clock in the morning with your college friends and you're like, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." I'm just suddenly petrified for no particular reason. You know, back in the day, something that some people, which I used to do with panic disorder, is you do what's called catastrophizing. Now, here's how I can illustrate that. Back then, give me a paper cut and 2 minutes on WebMD. and I could have needing an arm amputation, gangrene, sepsis, smallpox, and polio. And yes, I know some of them have been eradicated, but it just didn't matter. My favorite part would be when people would come up to me, and people don't know what to do when they find out, because for a long time I hid the fact that I had panic disorder. And the funny part is, I've been doing stand-up comedy since I was 18, and I've never had a panic attack on stage. Because welcome to panic disorder, I'll have it when I'm having pizza with my friends later. But when people would come up to me and they'd look me right in the eye, and they'd say, "Michelle, calm down." Well, thank you, genius. I never would have thought of that one on my own. My God, all this time I've just been thinking, wow, I feel like crap, and I'm really freaked out. Guess I ought to freak out some more. But people try. And so the reason I'm here today is because 18 plays a big part in my entire story. 18 years ago, I was asked by a doctor to try a medicine, and a miracle happened. In 3 months, I stopped having panic attacks, and I have never had a panic attack since. Now, that doesn't mean I don't struggle with anxiety, but I have a great therapist, I have a great husband, I have good friends. So the reason I'm here today is because unless I tell people, they don't know. They don't have a clue. I mean, I'm very comfortable up here. I could stay up here for another hour. They would be mad, but I could stay up here forever. But the whole point is that having mental health issues, having struggles, there should be no stigma. Stigma schmigma. This is my Brave. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to bring our next storyteller up, Lauren Marshall, with Lavender Solves Every... No woo, wait till I'm finished. With Lavender Solves Everything.
I am a native Baltimorean. I'm Italian and Bohemian. I'm a domestic violence survivor. I've experienced homelessness. I live with rapid cycling bipolar disorder. I'm a 2-time attempt survivor. I have a friend of mine that says, "That which does not kill me only makes my book longer." Tonight I'll share a tale that's about a shared moment of humility and appreciating your supports. So living with rapid cycling bipolar disorder, it made and makes prescribing medication quite tricky. I cycle every 4 to 5 hours like clockwork, so depending on what time of day I would go to the doctors would often influence what I was prescribed. And about 10 years ago, I was staying at my mother's house, and I would experience sleep paralysis within about 12 hours of taking a new medication. Oh my gosh. Where are my legs? Who is choking me? Where the hell am I? A few moments later, my body would slither off the side of the bed. And I just laid there, desperately trying to discern where I was. And I slowly started to recognize my surroundings, and I crawled my way into my mother's room. Ma, you gotta wake up. Something is terribly wrong here. I think I'm having a medication reaction. My mother turned on the light, and she just gasped, "Oh my gosh, honey, your eyes are like black saucers." Well, I started to bawl my face off. I was completely devastated. This was the umpteenth medication. I was just emotionally and physically exhausted. So she said, "Hang on, honey, I'll be right back." My mother went downstairs, and I could hear her in the kitchen banging around, searching for a cure. And a few moments later, she would return. I was still a hot mess. She said, "Here." And she handed me a glass of warm milk and started spraying lavender all over my pillow. So I made my way into the bathroom, and there we stood, and I came face to face with my black eyes. Sure enough, my pupils had the majority of real estate in my orbital cavity. I was looking wild. I said, Ma, something tells me we are well beyond more milk and lavender here. And we started cracking up, and it was a total Steel Magnolias moment. And I'll tell you, laughter through tears is still my favorite emotion. So, me today, no longer am I forced to navigate the emotional tsunamis of the past. Now it's more like a stream with its occasional bumps, lulls, and surges. That's thanks to a lot of work that I did in therapy, finding the right medication for me, having amazing supports, my family, my friends, my girlfriend, my coworkers, my 2 dogs, my cat, my new family, you. Thank you. So a lot has changed over the years. For 10 years, I was a Buddhist priest, and I was pursuing a career in clinical chaplaincy, and one day I thought, wow, oncology and trauma service lines are pretty intense. So I decided, hey, girlfriend, your own recovery is at stake here. So I needed to change gear. So 2 years ago, roughly, I retired from being a priest, and I enrolled in school. Currently, I'm a Chatham University grad student studying technical writing. All of the writing I do is geared towards mental health awareness, and I will graduate with my master's in August. I am so supported by my professors and my peers. Recovery is so much more than medication management. Recovery is acknowledging how the past informs the present. Recovery is reflecting on our hardships and taking pride in our responses. Recovery is listening to your brothers talk about what a badass you used to be, being grateful that you lived through it all. Recovery is appreciating the smell of lavender and having your mother as a support. Recovery is acknowledging the statistics, but refusing to become one of them.
Please welcome Gina Brown with Scarves.
Loud voices and sudden movements. I don't remember a time when they didn't cloak me in fear. I suspect in the 5 years before I was adopted, during this undocumented time, loud voices and sudden movements happened, solidifying their place in my world. What I do remember is that people would loudly and suddenly come to the foster home. And then people would loudly and suddenly leave the foster home. But for nearly 5 years, nobody loudly or suddenly came to the foster home to get me. They only loudly and suddenly left the foster home without me, leaving me with issues of abandonment, anxiety, and PTSD. But the thespian that I am, it was always veiled in every way possible. I wore my armored coat of humor daily, bar none. Then, decades later, the loud voices and sudden movements struck again. This time, they were all for me. Scarves. I used to wear scarves because I wanted to. Then I wore scarves because I had to. Pink boxes were your white flag, flowers and cookies always hidden in a bag. You bruise so easily, you said, as the welts rose and turned red. Yesterday we laughed with every breath. Today I'm hoping not to meet my death. As deep as my voice is, I'm only 5'1". You at 6'4", each arm is a gun. The same hands that caressed and held me belonged to a monster I tried not to see. I pressed 9 on my phone, but then you took it away. Please don't, you said. It will ruin our day. As I cowered between the toilet and the shower, I begged, please don't. My girls need their mother. My fear should have directed my steps away, but I always thought tomorrow is a new day. My intellect knew better, but my closet just got a thicker sweater. I wanted to help you, but I needed to live. My health was failing. I had nothing else to give. Nobody knew the secret I kept. By day, I smiled. By night, I wept. The EKG said heart attack. The doctor said stop. It was time for goodbye because I was about to drop. I got new scarves, so colorful and hip, that I now proudly wear, no longer under your grip. The box. You kept me in the box because that was comfortable for you. I stayed in the box because making you comfortable was comfortable for me, until it wasn't. Untied my wings, and I realized I could fly. I unlocked my voice and realized I could sing. I unbroke my heart and realized I could love. I unheard your no's, and I heard my yeses. I uncurled my fingers, and I started to write. I unfelt your judgment, and I was 200 pounds lighter. I unclogged my lungs, and I breathed again. I unburied my soul, and I could no longer fit in the box. We filter our lives for you, the public. We only want you to see our finest angle, so we erase the truths, delete the flaws, and add shadows. We squeeze into boxes in which we never truly fit. One day, I just kicked open the box, and I started writing. As the tears wet my paper, I wrote. When the ink dried up, I switched to pencil. I wrote scenes, scenarios, sketches, thoughts, comedy, poetry, anything and everything. And I opened up to my notebook. It knew me before I knew me. Then I read what I wrote, and I found me. And the pain of contorting myself into little boxes all these years started to erode. Through writing, I was reborn, healed even. We don't give ourselves permission to really know who we are because the knowledge is an open wound. And when we take off the Band-Aid, the air stings. So take off that Band-Aid and feel the sting. Write, dance, sing, cry, shout, love. Because after the scab peels, you'll have a shiny new layer of skin. I'm Gina Brown, and this is my Brave. Thank you.
Next is Dan Collins with Depression is Not My Co-Pilot.
Depression. It sounds like something you'd see a plastic surgeon about. We'll inject some collagen into this depression in the side of your face. You look great. Depression, as in the Great Depression, was just that, a time of great economic upheaval, which undoubtedly sent many Americans, hungry, jobless, and homeless, into clinical depression. Depression, it's that dip in the road that becomes a sinkhole that it swallows your car, or your sanity, or your life. Oh, it's a ponderous word, this depression. Author William Styron felt the word like the punch needed to truly describe this insidious condition. He pondered brainstorm, but that word already came with its own baggage. While brainstorm typically invokes visions of eureka moments, a flourish of ideas, depression is often quite the opposite. In depression, I learned, one does not soar to exhilarating heights of insight, but rather we ooze, typically toward nothing other than the fetal position in our beds. Depression is sometimes the disease, and sometimes it's a symptom of another disease. And it's not an only child. It has many siblings. Take its typically more jittery cousin, anxiety. Anxiety and I are also very well acquainted, an issue I suffered since childhood. In kindergarten, I was too anxious to speak for myself, so I often gave response to my childhood friend, Marky. He was my emotional human shield I used to protect myself. As I grew, Marky disappeared from my life, but anxiety and the depression it breeds remained constant companions, my life's co-pilots. I was a kid, so I didn't even know what the word was, anxiety. I told my mom that I just felt nervous. In school, I remember wondering, what am I so nervous about? Why is this happening? My dad liked to tell me the story of me as a high school student staying up all hours to make sure a paper was typed perfectly. A mistake, a smudged paper, tear it up, do it again. Never mind, it's 3 a.m. He insisted, you don't have to do it this way. Then myself in tears crying out, it's the only way I know. This was obsessive-compulsive behavior, and as I would find years later, the key to understanding my pain. It took a moment of critical mass to impel me to seek help. Spring, 1991. Feeling as though I were being devoured by a panic attack that would never end, I became a man possessed. I had to understand what was happening to me. I'd jump in the car and drive to malls to purchase books about mental health. I visited churches. I called NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. I went to hospital ERs, hoping, praying to be seen, horrified at the notion that I might have to wait a month or two for a psychiatrist appointment when I felt I could barely last another minute. There are few conditions worse than to be terrified of oneself. You cannot leave your body. You cannot escape. Everywhere you go, there you are. As the character Lucifer explains in Milton's Paradise Lost, hell is not so much a physical place than a state of being, one he carries with him wherever he goes. My only refuge from the hell, which had become my very self, was sleep. A dreamless, inky, black sleep that provided no rest, left me without appetite or humor. As I pored over the books I purchased, trying to find an answer, my father said something that continues to resonate with me to this day. You're not going to think your way out of this. He was right. Studying cancer research will not cure you of your cancer. It was not about what I was thinking, but what I was feeling. Eventually, I did see a psychiatrist and was diagnosed with major depression with OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder. Slowly, incrementally, along with talk and pharmacologic therapy, but it seemed like the size of Jupiter pressing upon me got smaller and smaller and smaller until one morning I realized I was no longer in fear of myself. The summer-long panic attack had passed, but it was not, nor will it ever be, forgotten. As I would learn, depression is not a cold, it's a chronic condition that can return almost any time, with or without a traumatic life event, to send you spiraling. I've learned to embrace elements of my condition. Being OCD makes me very detail-oriented, which has proven helpful in my careers, from reporter and editor to university instructor to public relations professional. So I guess even mental illness can have a silver lining. I'm extremely fortunate now to be married to a woman who understands that she's endured her own demons. In January 2016, before a large crowd at Morgan State University, she delivered a TEDx talk about her experience with schizoaffective disorder. So now we monitor each other. We look for the warning signs. We encourage each other. We speak out when we can, telling our stories about mental illness, doing interviews, writing blogs. We remind each other to take our medication and to seek therapy when the going gets too tough. Depression, anxiety, they are eternal traveling companions. However, we don't have to give them the front seat.
Next is Barbara Vandervossen with Old Grief.
I can't recall a time when I was unaware of words and the way their definitions dance, hold sway, start love, start hate, and everything in between. When grown people talk down to me, at the time no taller than their knees, giving me the kids' menu of conversations, I would frown to let them know that they could take me seriously. But they would chuckle and say, "Why are you so angry?" I grew up Dutch, writing with fountain pen, made to use American pencil around age 10, as if I was uncertain, as if mistakes inevitable and something to erase. I'm still aware of words and take care to mean what I say, but I pen my mistakes when I assume that others do the same. Words are the difference between, "Are you okay?" when I'll answer yes, because I am, spine straight, shoulders back, head held high, like always, and the question, "Did you get hurt?" when I'll answer yes, because I did. Spine soft, I'll curl up, lean into you, sigh, and rest for just a little while. I wrote this poem on December 1st, 2016. Decades of stress, old grief, and trauma brought me to a stopping point. We live in a culture that undervalues rest. We are pushed to keep going, keep fighting, keep striving. But stress, grief, and trauma don't get pushed through. They just get pushed down where they compound. This is the poem Glass. And now it seems the ocean I was yesterday free swimming in has turned into a fishbowl, brought me back into my skin again, and wrought the endless space into a stationary sphere, running headlong into glass walls, though the water is quite clear. Now I cannot throw the stones I spit out all the time, but you within your glass house can throw stones right into mine. It used to be that when I swam, I cut right through the waves to ride the tides and chase the sun from ray to submerged ray. Now when I look for that joy, I meet ends that can't meet me. I turn myself right round again, infinity degrees. With every circled sojourn, I now sink a little deeper, forget myself inside these walls that seemingly grow steeper. It used to be that when I swam, I danced upon the surf to breathe the air, then dive again with spine and graceful curve. Now when I come up for air, I find myself rushed gasping. Don't know when I will breach again, the strands of seaweed grasping. And since it is so tempting there, my favorite color green, perhaps I will stop swimming now and rest right in between. I was exhausted. Divorce, death, disappointments. Old grief was stuck to me and new grief adhered to it like layers of sediment. And yet, the act of writing my exhaustion helped me name it and moved me through it. I have drawn, painted, written poetry, and sung throughout my entire life, but only on the periphery of full-time work and raising my children. I had talent without a purpose. The urge to create lay dormant until a slew of impossible years turned me inward. At the time, my body was failing to the extent that I thought I had heart problems, Lyme disease, arthritis, you name it. I tried to hunt down the diagnosis and the cure. Exhausted and grieving, I surrendered to the need for rest. I began writing again. I began painting again. I began singing again. The arts help us identify old grief, and sometimes the root of grief is found in a different place than where you thought it was. This latest grief I discovered only very recently. On January 10th, I wrote the poem Unclosure. It never occurred to me to grieve the bricks, painted frames molding anno long ago, a crackling, crushed white shell bicycle path where fenced-in deer ate from our hands. Irrationally picturesque, but real and still, inconsequential, but then looming hill on the Molenweg, conquering of which was once a triumph. My kid bike a boldly boyish green, our soapbox car a plywood death trap. We courted danger with our legs outstretched, screaming like banshees. If you could find the pedals to brake in time before soaring into two-lane traffic on the Eemnesserweg, then you won. I didn't know it was a severing of roots in my umbilical cord anno a decade prior. At the time, just a transatlantic bungee pulled taut. We flouted community with our arms outstretched, screaming like banshees, intent to return with a new language and stories of imposing sounding but kind of sickly Washington, D.C., we thought then. Here now, home in the dark, when the leaves smell wet and autumnal, lost in detachment lightly sear, yearn for undoing, for pre-jump ignorance of the disappointments yet to come. My small village an illusory womb, forever intact because I left prematurely and politely. I felt displaced for a long time. While I always knew there would be a way forward, I didn't know what it was. I could not see it. Now, I feel as though my experiences were leading me to a career where I can use my talents as well as my empathy in a community-driven way. I am happily working toward a graduate degree in art therapy. The arts help us name. They bring us stillness in difficult moments. They pull compound grief out of us and they move us through. This is not a culmination, though. This is a beginning. Here's the poem, Battered. At my house, through the concrete cracks, Susan, with her black eye, proliferates and takes up space, toes pushed through tiny fissures. She stretches her legs, says, "Here I am, and see what I made in this earth beneath." Battered? No, not me. Thank you.
Please welcome Teresa Scott with Broken.
I come from a place that represents pain, but made it my choice not to place blame. My daddy was nothing but an alcoholic fool. He'd come home to beat Ma and use her as a tool. It didn't matter. Us kids was right there. He'd smack her around, throw her in a chair. Until one night, the blood came rushing down. He beat her and beat her until he heard a sound. His self-conscious, I wonder, tapped on his shoulder. It said, "Stop this right now, or her life is over." She left him that night to find a new man. This one, he would do horrible things with his hands. But she loved this man, and she became blind to all of the disgusting things that he was deep inside. He was a trucker, obsessed over porn. He'd come home late at night to fondle firstborn. He would take his disgusting hands and place them right there. "Tell your mother, little girl, you better not dare. I have people, you know," that's what he would say. "If you say anything, they will take you away." She endured this pain day after day, year after year, until finally she broke down into tears. The sick freak was right. Ma didn't believe. Instead, she pointed the finger at me. "Get out, nasty girl, and don't ever come back. This is all your fault, and you wanted all of that." You can see how this girl would doubt her self-worth. How could her own mother leave her so hurt? She was out on her own. Lack of love broke her down. She became desperate. She wanted someone to be around. Young, broken, and ignorant, someone came her way and said all of the wonderful things she had yearned someone to say. Without looking any deeper, she thought to herself, "He's a keeper." Little did she know, he'd make her even weaker. He would lie and insist everything was okay. But she saw right through to the argument and fight. She saw this vicious cycle that she knew she had to break. is my life. I have to change. The days are going quicker. She woke up, packed her bags, and left that life. That girl, she stands before you tonight. This girl has discovered more than gold. And all that I speak of, that stuff is just old. See, it's all been a lesson and a part of God's plan. And I trust Him wholeheartedly as I give Him my hand. I trust you, dear God. I trust in your plan. Thank you for molding me into who I am. For when I look back, it is clear to see that I have grown. It's only made me look harder. And that pain which I know has made me much stronger. See, my faith today is supernaturally strong, for I found my purpose. I feel right alone. I am here to uplift, to love, and to teach. That no matter your troubles, true joy is within reach. I am here to testify of God's amazing grace, to radiate love and forgiveness when you see my face. I have been called to do amazing things, and it is through perseverance and our Lord that freedom brings. My name is Shirley Scott, and this is my brave.
Of course, I decided to wear makeup today. I'd like to introduce and have you welcome my co-producer, Phila Hoops, with Reintegrating the Lost Child.
Thank you, Michelle. When I saw last year's This Is My Brave, I had consciously been navigating complex PTSD for 10 months, unconsciously navigating it for a lifetime. For me, the experience of complex PTSD defined the stigma of mental illness. This newly identified condition, not yet in the DSM, may be a baby or young child's response to long-term, inescapable, and ongoing psychological or emotional trauma. Trauma that permanently skews the child's understanding of self and cannot be verbalized, as the child has no words. For me, it came with the weight of my father's rages and shunning. It showed up in chasms of blank memory left by disassociation, in tidal waves of inexplicable triggered emotion, defensive rage, overwhelming grief, all wordless. It showed up in the lost shadow child's desperate, defensive, and unconscious need to deflect and diffuse and deny, to cover any sign of a problem, to take refuge in causing confusion. One counselor described it aptly as a miasma. For this reason, like many of those experiencing CPTSD, I found little relief through talk therapy and none through medication. I passed through a gauntlet of psychologists and psychiatrists in my 20s, receiving a spectrum of diagnoses and medications without relief. Made half-hearted attempts at suicide, more times than I can count, sometimes using those medications, while always avoiding injury that would send me to the hospital or catalyze any real conversation or change in my father's family. I desperately wanted to stop the pain, but I was equally afraid of causing a fuss. And I realize now, neither the child nor I really wanted to die. As with many CPTSD patients, it was mainly consciousness techniques and prayer that brought me incrementally to balance over the past 25 plus years. Through marriage, motherhood, widowhood, the reinvention of my career, and the loss of my parents. Through the help of mindfulness teachers, energy healers, and the occasional maverick therapist, I learned to separate from the accusing, internalized voices of my father, childhood bullies, inner judge. I learned to separate data, documentable facts, from interpretation or judgment. I learned to center deep in nature, to meditate, not to believe everything I thought. It helped, somewhat. The childhood memories remained lost. Many of the emotional triggers remained inexplicable. I was able to manage the grief, self-doubt, and self-judgment better, but they still remained. I gradually became a hermit, living mostly online, going out rarely. And then in 2017, as I went through my parents' papers 3 years after my father's passing, I found a tiny notebook in which my mother had documented a year of my father's behavior toward me when I was a preteen. Who knows why or why she stopped, but it was the key that opened my buried memories with the force of a full soul retrieval. Finally, the therapist I was seeing had a smoking gun, complex PTSD. Since then, my work has been reconnecting with, integrating, and loving the newly found child and her long-buried perspectives, pains, gifts, and delights. Hugging trees, drawing deep upon their anchored wisdom. Walking by the river, reassuring and coaxing the child, moving at her pace, as I dare to balance on unsteady rocks and scoot her, my Fanny, across a tree crossing the river. Step by step, reclaiming her joy and connection, healing her fears, giving her room to grow. Recalling and echoing my mother's assurances that she is good, she is loved. Over and over again, choosing life with all the child's stubborn, feral creativity, instinctive wisdom, and faith. And month by month, the symptoms have slowly diminished. Today, I'm stepping out of my hermit habits, building new friendships, and once again connecting with community. Reclaiming my life, building my Reiki practice, creating a foundation for my dreams. Sharing my experiences and the tools that I've found among a growing group of like-minded others. Gratefully affirming consciousness and life in all their fullness, shadow and light. I am Phila Hoops, and this is my Brave.
Please welcome Alnesia Gibson with I Don't Look Like What I've Been Through.
People look at the exterior and they have no idea the pain, the hurt, and the suffering I've endured. That's why the title of my poem is, I Don't Look Like What I've Been Through. Yes, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and anxiety in 2006, but I made it through. Yes, I've been hospitalized 3 times, but I made it through. Yes, I attempted suicide before my daughter's first birthday, but I made it through. Yes, I've been over 40 different medications, but I made it through. Yes, I was physically stabbed at the age of 16, but I made it through. Yes, I lost my job due to my mental health condition, but I made it through. Yes, I've been stigmatized, but I made it through. Yes, I've been hurt, but I've made it through. Yes, I've been divorced, but I've made it through. Yes, I've been hurt, but I made it through. Yes, I'm a single mom, but I'm making it through. See, I've learned through this that I have to focus more on the good than the bad. Through the hurt, the pain, the suffering, the loss of job, it was for a reason. So let me share a little bit about the good. I've had the opportunity to speak at several faith-based communities and mental health facilities, both inpatient and outpatient programs, speaking about mental health, hope, and recovery. I've also co-chaired the Prince George's County and Montgomery County Out of the Darkness Walk, sponsored by the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. I also received a State of Appreciation Award by the Governor of Maryland for my contributions to the Maryland state. I also have had the opportunity to serve on the board of directors for the National Alliance of Mental Illness, the Anne Arundel County, and the Prince George's County affiliate. I've also been featured on 2 public television stations speaking about mental health and suicide prevention. My twin daughters, one has a degree in IT, the other has a degree in criminal justice, and my 11-year-old consistently stays on honor roll. And that's why I say, I don't look like what I've been through.
Keeps up, I'm going to look like a raccoon very soon, so. Please welcome Alana Taylor with Riding the Surfboard.
My journey with anxiety and depression is like riding on a wave with a surfboard, but a faulty one. So our surfboard represents our experiences, our emotions, values, and our spirit, which forms the foundation on which we ride on the waves of life. But for those of us with mental health challenges, we have a surfboard with breaks, cracks, chips, and areas where it's warped due to past trauma, loss, abuse, or mental health issues linked to heredity or a chemical imbalance. So by my early 20s, I'm riding on great waves towards financial growth, career development, great relationships. But it's inevitable that it was all going to come crashing down on me because I'm riding on a surfboard damaged from my childhood. And when that wave came crashing down, I did my best to gain my footing, to come up for air, just to have some stability, some relief. And I would just get up, despite having even a more damaged surfboard, because, I'm in my 20s, and I'm young, and I'm impatient, so I just catch any wave, any job, any man. That's a whole nother presentation in itself. So by my early 40s, I realized that when I wash up on the shore and the water recedes, that I just didn't need to rush out and catch the next wave, that I needed to take that time to examine my surfboard. So that break was from the time when he tried to throw my mom out of the car while it was moving, and I was in the back seat. That chip was from the time that we had to rush out of the house in the middle of the night because he threatened to kill her with a knife in hand. I barely had time to get my Raggedy Ann. And that crack was from the time when the police did show up, but they wouldn't arrest him because he was a decorated Vietnam War veteran. So I learned that during the time when I did wash up on the shore after the turbulence, and I just laid there, I knew I had to do the work to repair my surfboard. And better yet, I knew I had to take that time to restore my body and heal my mind, so I had more clarity and discernment on which wave to catch when it came to business opportunities, friendships, and relationships. By my late 40s, I learned even a greater lesson. I learned that when that wave did come crashing down on me, that I didn't need to struggle and fight, that it was okay to be still in the moment. It was okay for the water to rush over me. It was okay to cry. It was okay to stay in bed. It was okay to Netflix and self-chill. It was okay just to let that water wash over me because it was going to recede. I was going to be on that shore, and I needed that energy to do the greater work of healing and repairing my board. So I guess my response to my anxiety and depression really determined my steps towards healing. It determined that I'm here at this very moment, and it determined that I'm going to be brave. Thank you.
I'm just saying, we didn't cry this much in rehearsal, that's all I'm saying. Next up is Kim Beauchamp with 2 teachers.
When I was a child, 2 teachers helped me understand what it means to live with a mental health disorder. The first was Mrs. M, my first grade teacher. Even though I loved to learn, I hated elementary school. I was terrified that my mother would forget to pick me up at the end of each day. Every morning, Mrs. M would have to pry me from my mother. Goodbye, Mommy, I shrieked over and over. My throat was raw from screaming, but I wanted to say the words as many times as I could, in case I never saw Mom again. As a 6-year-old, I had no idea what the letters OCD stood for, and I don't think my parents or teachers knew much about the disorder either. Now that I know my diagnosis, I realize that the first grade was the beginning of my obsessive-compulsive disorder. Being abandoned at school was the obsessive thought. Calling my mom at lunch to remind her to pick me up was the compulsion to alleviate anxiety. I would have gone to the front office to use the phone every hour if I could. One afternoon, I approached Mrs. M's desk to ask yet again if I could call my mom. No, not today, Mrs. M said. My legs were wobbling so much I was afraid they wouldn't hold me up. I tried to take a deep breath, but couldn't. Mrs. M sighed, told me to go back to my seat. Please, I begged. The tears dripped off my chin. Can I call? You cannot call your mother. This is ridiculous. She will not forget to pick you up. You need to drop this. Just drop it. Mrs. M's booming voice not only silenced me, but the chatter of the other kids eating lunch. The whole classroom went silent, save for my soft, shuddering breaths. Mrs. M and the other adults in my life didn't understand what OCD was doing to me. It was easy to mistake my meltdowns over plans that didn't go just right as tantrums to get my way. Repetitive questions or demands for reassurance were interpreted as ploys for attention instead of anxious compulsions that I couldn't control. Why can't you just drop it? Why can't you just go with the flow? You shouldn't be so self-centered. These repeated messages made me think that I was intolerable to everyone around me. I wanted to be a better person with all of my heart. Years later, another unforgettable teacher came into my life, my sophomore English teacher, Miss B. I loved when she'd spontaneously call on me in class. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Kim, she'd say, asking for my opinion on whatever passage we were reading. She'd smile and look at me like I was the only student in the room. I was hungry for her compliments. While I usually excelled in English, everything fell apart for me when I got an 86 on my grammar quiz one day. In high school, most of my OCD centered around grades. Anything less than an A was unacceptable. Studying involved a variety of compulsions. I had to recite terms and concepts a certain number of times in my head. Sometimes I would rewrite a sentence over and over, trying to make the words perfect. I couldn't stand the sight of that 86. I was such a bad student, and now even Miss B knew it. At the end of that class period, I tore out a sheet of notebook paper. With great effort, I wrote a single sentence, folded the page in half. I handed the note to Miss B on my way out the door, hurrying from the classroom before she could read the words I had written. I'm sorry, I'm a failure. Miss B asked me to stay after class the next day. Her voice was soft and serious. I read your note yesterday. Why do you think that you're a failure? My grammar quiz I finally managed. I got a terrible grade. I'm so sorry. Miss B opened her grade book, puzzled. You got an 86. I searched for a way to explain. English and writing are the only things I'm good at. If I don't do well, it's like I have nothing to offer to anyone. I have to get all A's. Sweetheart, there's no reason to be sorry. You work so hard. You're a good student even when you don't get all A's. The whispered words tumbled out before I could stop them. I hate myself. Miss B put her arms around me and held me as I cried. I'm so proud of you for telling me how you feel, she said. I'm glad I know how much you're hurting so I can help. I learned so much from my 2 grade teachers. Both have helped in my recovery. My 1st grade teacher taught me a powerful, though painful lesson. She taught me how easy it is to stigmatize and misunderstand difficult thoughts and feelings. She taught me how easily words can shame. Miss B taught me that words can also heal. I'll never forget the day I wrote that one desperate sentence, I'm sorry that I'm a failure, and how Miss B never judged me for it. How she soothed, acknowledged, and encouraged my pain. Today, I speak about my struggles in therapy, learn skills to help me live with OCD and depression. As a professional writer and editor, I strive to use words for good even when they are imperfect. I haven't spoken to Miss B in years, but I hope she'd like the person I've become. I think she'd be proud of me for sharing my brave.
Before I introduce our next person, something really cool has come to my attention. Miss B, who was Kim's teacher, who helped her, is here today. Could she please stand up? Miss B. Kim was going to ask your permission if I could do that, but she didn't get around to it, so there you go. Oh, man. You know what I think we should do? I think that for the rest of history, This Is My Brave should be sponsored by Kleenex. Okay, next up, we have Stacy Reyna, The Day I Thought I Entered Heaven.
I have a vivid recollection of the day I had my nervous breakdown. But let me tell you the story prior to the day I felt like I entered heaven. I had competed in a bodybuilding competition, which was a huge accomplishment in my eyes. Because of my success, I truly believe that you could achieve anything if you put your mind towards it. I had a feeling of ultimate euphoria, and I felt nothing could bring me down. I wanted to hold on to that feeling of euphoria for a lifetime. I thought my purpose on earth was to show everyone that they had the power to create the same feeling of euphoria. This is when I began my quest to figure out the meaning of life. I sailed my ship and began my soul-searching journey. I began to write feverishly. Life was a puzzle, and I was determined that I would figure out the riddle. Everything seemed to make sense. I was completing the puzzle piece by piece, until one night I slept at a friend's house, and I had a severe asthma attack. I was rushed to the hospital. They put prednisone intravenously throughout my bloodstream. The prednisone put me into a more euphoric state of mind. I didn't heed my doctor's request to stay home and rest. That night I was released. I went to the Hamptons to join my friends and some drinking fun. I was still trying to complete the puzzle of life. It was the car ride home that would change my life forever. I was pleading with God to help me discover the meaning of life. Please let me figure it out. I would be able to share this knowledge with the world. At that moment when I was pleading with God, this feeling of enlightenment filled my mind. I felt birds flapping in my stomach, and I started to cry hysterically. I thanked God profusely as I thought that I had entered heaven. I've never felt so much peace in my life. The first thing that I knew I had to do was thank my angels. I drove to my friend's house to thank them, as I thought they had allowed me to enter heaven. My friend immediately thought something was wrong. She drove me to my house because she was worried. That night, I was an emotional mess. I was delirious. I was crying, then laughing, then crying all over again. My parents were unsure what to do. They thought their only option was to take me to the psychiatric hospital. I begged and pleaded with them not to take me, but they felt like they had no choice. When we arrived, I tried to fight with the doctors, telling them that I did not belong there. They restrained me and insisted that that is where I belonged. I remember I walked down the hospital corridor and looked back at the nurse, confused, and said, "Am I crazy?" I took my medicine day after day while I was in the hospital and became sedated and sluggish. My friends and family and myself were unsure if I was on the appropriate dosage. I later learned that meds are a complete guessing game, trial and error at its finest. Medication for me was my biggest struggle. It still is to this day. After my 2 weeks were up, the doctor thought I was ready to be discharged. I was about to enter the real world. I was not ready, as I still felt so confused as to what the hell I just went through. I was going to have to navigate this life with a new diagnosis. I was bipolar. I had a new diagnosis that I thought would define my life. I was crippled by fear and paralyzed with emotion. I didn't know how I was going to survive. I hid my story for years. Only my close friends and family knew. Years went by without a manic episode. I got off my medication and things were looking up. But then 2004 came and slammed me in the face. I heard the news that I got accepted to graduate school, got married, and moved to a different state all at once. I was overwhelmed with stress, to say the least. I was so scared to go to graduate school because I knew it would be so hard. How is a person with a learning disability plus being bipolar going to make it through? I was paralyzed by fear and my manic thoughts started to resurface. I couldn't sleep, concentrate, or do my job effectively. The doctors told me that I would have to be on medication once again, this time for the rest of my life. I eventually surrendered to the fact that I would be bipolar for the rest of my life. Although I was no longer in denial, I still felt like this disease was my secret as well as my black cloud. I was still ashamed. I always felt alone in my disease until the day I sat in the audience of This Is My Brave. Knowing I was not alone in this disease took the burden off and eased the pain. I realized that if I live with this fear, then I'm only perpetuating the stigma. I am Stacy, a beautiful mind that happens to be bipolar. I refuse to be defined by bipolar. I will not be burdened by the label. I will rise above and embrace this disease. I may not be everything, but I'm realizing that I am enough. I am brave, strong, and courageous. My fear will no longer be the cape that I wear. I will wear the cape of hope and rise above. So now that my secret is out that I have bipolar, what does this mean for my life? It means that I may experience highs and lows, and I am at risk for relapse if life becomes too stressful to bear. It means I will have to take medicine daily to regulate my moods. It will mean regular therapy appointments. But most of all, it will mean having faith in myself and God to know everything is going to be all right. You should know that with my resilient nature, I was able to push through and receive a master's degree. I've been married for 14 years, and I have a beautiful daughter that I get to call my own, who gave me purpose and direction. I have my tribe of friends who have seen me through the peaks and valleys of life for over 20 years. I will continue to dance through the rainstorms and bear witness of the rainbows that always follow. Telling my story will be my medicine, it will be my inspiration, and it will be what saves my life.
Two of Stacy's friends actually came with her when she auditioned. It was really cool. Next up, we have Rachel Thrasher with The Letter I'll Never Send.
Dear Father, remember when you took me hunting with you? It's probably about 6 or 7. Using the fallen trees as balance beams, I managed to stand on a log full of fire ants who found their way up both pant legs. You calmed me down as you shook every last ant out of the pockets. That memory's pretty vivid, but it's buried underneath so many damaging memories. The words that you screamed out at me because the world must have gotten just too tough for you. Your fist pulled back as you lost control of your rage. The hole in my childhood bedroom from that fist. The tears I spilled when I couldn't manage to keep my mother and siblings safe from you. I think I'd rather take the log full of ants. Most people might wish their father never left them. I wish you had. Silence has never felt more refreshing. We don't have to walk through a house made of glass and eggshells anymore. There's no alarm sounding when the liquor cabinet gets opened, or closets to hide in when you have a screaming match with anyone within ear's reach. Once that last straw broke, we walked out and never looked back. That cabinet that once held your vice now holds pots and pans. The closets we once hid in now hold our keepsakes and wardrobes. I don't know when enough became enough. I just didn't wake up one day with the decision that I wasn't going to let you direct my life's play anymore. It's been a slow, grueling process, learning why I live with a constant fear and how to loosen the grip it has on me, enough to actually heal a bit. And at some point, I stopped feeling guilty for the distance between us, because I need it. As time has passed, the details have blurred, raised voices and ugly names have formed bricks, and fear formed mortar. I was an excellent builder as a child, constructing a wall around me much taller than I ever grew. But within those walls, I trapped your essence. Even after we left, the echoes grew louder within what I thought was my safe place. I was trapped within myself with no devised escape plan. My safe place became my panic room, and anxiety gripped me like I was its favorite stuffed animal. I never wanted my childhood back. I just wanted to grow into my adulthood free from that jail. So I started chipping away at the structure that held me captive. With each brick I removed, I found strength. I became overwhelmed with the desire to demolish my crutch and prove you wrong. I am enough. I am worthy. I am not my father's daughter. I will stop the cycle with me. My children will not have to recover from their childhood. I am brave. I'm chasing my 30s with all kinds of therapy in tow. My battle with PTSD and anxiety leave my body mangled and tangled in its own muscles. There's still constant fear, but now there's a glimpse of hope. Hope that I will continue to gain control over what I used to blame myself for. It's not my fault. I didn't have a say in who my father would be, but instead of viewing it as a curse, now I see it as a blessing. Even through the days where my strength's wavering, I know I'm stronger than I was yesterday. I don't live in guilt for focusing on self-care and healing. I am broken, but not unfixable. Broken things let the light hit places it wouldn't have otherwise lit up. And I'm ready to share that light with those that may need help finding the light switch.
And quick aside, this is how important this is. Rachel traveled to all our rehearsals from Southern Maryland. Next up is Jane Spell with All the World's a Stage.
Can you all hear me in the back row? Can you hear me now? Okay, Andrea and I had a little bit of issue during the sound check. We just felt like we projected better through this one. And I'll say a little joke about Andrea. Her story is about, look at me. And I said, my story is about, don't look at me. So I just want to say, Andrea rocks, as does all the cast, and I can't thank you all enough for your kindness. All the world's a stage. Shakespeare once said, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. I had no way of knowing how true those words would ring, and what a foreboding foreshadow of things to come that would be. Little did I know the world would become one big, frightening, never-ending stage. After a terrifying experience in a high school speech class, which I was left with overwhelming stage fright in every area of my life. I should have been able to ace the class. There was just one slight problem. I couldn't actually deliver the speech. My notes shook in my hands, my face went fire engine red, my voice was quaking, and I was shaking like a leaf. What on earth was happening to me? I used to be so calm, cool, and collected. My heart started racing and pounding, and I thought I was going to die, either by heart attack or embarrassment. I had lost control over my very physiology. My own body had betrayed me. I felt like a former extrovert, now trapped in an introvert's body. I had no way of knowing I was having my first social phobic panic attack, and thus the nightmare began. I failed the speech, and the rest of the semester was more of the same. I was at risk of not graduating high school. Seriously? I ended up with a D, which stood for devastated, and it spelled damage, which had already been done. Tragically, there was life before and after the speech class. I went from being a confident student and a social butterfly to a shy, shrinking violet. To say it was a life-altering event would be a drastic understatement. It not only pulled the rug out from under my feet, it took the floor with it. It rocked my very foundation to its core. The speech class behavior immediately generalized to everywhere, and it spread like wildfire. I could no longer speak in any class or any group, anywhere, ever. Performance anxiety affected virtually every aspect of my life, from family to friends, work, church, relationships, you name it. A few examples of how social anxiety disorder can affect you. With all my friends, I used to be a ringleader of our group and the life of the party, but now I had become mute. With employment, many social phobics work at jobs well below their capability and credentials and never reach their full potential. That was my experience for years. With home life, I came from a large, loving family, and dinner time used to be a lively time of sharing. After speech class, I could barely say, "Pass the salt." I couldn't even talk at the dinner table with my own family. Even more tragically, some social phobics never go on to have families of their own because kids draw attention to them, both positive and negative, and that was way too high risk for this social phobic. Some wait until it's too late. Never having had children has been the most unbearable loss of all. And now no grandchildren, grieving for that which never was and that which will never be. That's what this disorder can take from you. I should also note that the first therapist that I turned to for help when I was 19, I thought was God. Instead, he began grooming me, waited for me to turn 21, and sexualized our therapeutic relationship, and terminated our therapy. I was then worse off than when I came in, with an entirely new set of problems. Yes, there's a name for it. It's called therapist abuse. That's another whole story. I'm still working on that one. Social anxiety tried to silence me. Nevertheless, she persisted. Thank you. After the trauma of high school, I went on to get an Associate of Arts, despite how excruciatingly painful it was socially. With fear and trepidation, I went on to get a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and I graduated magna cum laude. The icing on the cake was when I went on to grad school at Loyola and earned a Master's of Science in Counseling Psychology. I was also inducted into the Psi-Chi National Honor Society. Mind you, all this time, I still couldn't raise my hand to even ask a question in class. I then completed all my post-grad coursework, which was more like a double master's, then client contact hours and supervision towards certification and licensure. I sat for the national board exam, and I became a national certified counselor. I later sat for the state board's legal exam, and I became a licensed clinical professional counselor. I then became covered by insurance as a master's level psychotherapist. Fully credentialed in Maryland and DC. I came a long way from high school speech class. It was many years before I found the right combination of treatment for social anxiety, including the right type of medication. Then years later, I found help through all-natural practitioners, which I'm forever grateful for. I don't know that there's any one magic bullet for any of this stuff. We're sharing what has helped us and doing the best we can. In 2013, it was the privilege of a lifetime to attend a program in Arizona specifically for overcoming social anxiety. It was totally transformational, and they gave me new wings to fly. A rose bloomed in the desert, and that rose was me. I then met my lifetime goal of running my very first therapy group for clients with social anxiety disorder. It was an accomplishment of a lifetime. Through years of studying, therapy, and hard work, I overcame with determination, perseverance, and the help of a loving God. I've been back in private practice for the last 7 years, specializing in the treatment of anxiety disorders, even as I continue to confront my own anxiety at times. But I face my fears, and I accept my anxiety. I truly get it in a way that only someone who's been there ever could. There is a poignant quote by Henry Nouwen, who wrote a book called The Wounded Healer. He says, "The great illusion of leadership is to think that man can be let out of the desert by someone who has never been there." This is my Lenten journey in the desert. Also, our staff director once said, "Many of you have overcome huge circumstances in your own lives that inspired you to make a difference in the lives of others. It is because you have walked the road first yourself that you are able to sit with the pain of others." I am grateful to now have meaningful work. I count my blessings to have a wonderful husband, all my old friends, and many new friends, my family, and a welcoming and accepting church community. I have gone from social anxiety to social justice. Don't let social anxiety take from you what it took from me. Seek treatment early and get the right type of help. Have the kids, and don't worry about what anyone else thinks. Pursue your passion. Never give up. I would welcome the opportunity to share more of my story with your organization. My goal is to be a voice for the voiceless, for all those who are still suffering in silence. Know that you're not alone. Here's to wellness, willingness to be vulnerable, genuine authenticity, and living out of who we are. Thank you for the honor of letting me share here today and giving me the courage to find my voice to speak up and speak out publicly by raising awareness about this much misunderstood disorder. As frightening as this was, going public, it was that important to me as an advocate. My hope is that it brings you hope. This is my brave.
Now I've got 2 microphones. I may never leave the stage. Last, but most certainly not least, please welcome Drea Landry Brown with Look at Me.
My dress is caught in my knee pads. I want to say how brave all of you are for being here and for welcoming us in your space on this beautiful Saturday. Welcome to a world of new sights and sounds, where there's no differentiation between night and day. Up becomes down, and squiggly lines make sense. Welcome to the bipolar zone. For as long as I can remember, I have always commanded attention. Can you tell? The more I could exaggerate the point of whatever it was I did, the more attention I craved. And I tell you, it just fueled my imagination. I never considered the consequences of my actions, just the renewed sense of how it felt just to hear all of y'all laugh. I tell you something funny. You ready for this? I convinced my mother I adopted a kangaroo to come play with my kids. Can you do that? You know, my family is used to me being able to pull off whatever my imagination comes up with, so believe me when I tell you, my mother, who is a retired parole officer, believed me. You know, the fun times were only overshadowed by a deep sadness that I couldn't shake. A sadness that took away my smile, my ingenuity, and sometimes my reason for living. These experiences were my definition of life as I knew it. I didn't consider that life would be different until the day it imploded around my ears. You see, I have a couple of boys, and they did something I didn't give them permission to do. Can you guys guess what it was? No? They grew up. You see, I had never developed a life of my own, an identity of my own. I became, or I should say, I went from being a daughter to somebody's mother, to somebody's wife, to divorced. And then them little kids had the nerve to grow up and leave home. I mean, come on now, really? After they left, I tell you, I became numb, listless, catatonic. My mother found me on the floor of my bedroom. I hadn't bathed in days, looking at the ceiling, just, ugh. She said, you know, there is life without kids. Come on now, quit being so dramatic. I'm like, Mom. So she said, go talk to a therapist. Everything's going to be all right. You just watch. You go talk to this person. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I went to go talk to this guy about my empty nest, right? Guy said, what's the longest you've ever stayed awake? I said, 7 days straight. He said, you have bipolar disorder. I'm like, are you serious? Who does that? There was no explanation where it came from, how I got it, if I could give it back. I'm telling you, this is definitely something I would love to give back. But I tell you, the Twilight Zone, you know, Rod Sterling came in my bedroom and said, come on, Drea, we got to go. It was horrible. I went through a year of medication challenges that were just awful. And then I finally found a therapist that would work with me. She helped me learn some alternative coping skills on how to manage not being able to sleep, the racing thoughts, all the other madness that I was going through, although she couldn't stop me from convincing my family of some of the outrageous stuff I've done. Today, I am a wiser me, as I have described through my poem, Look at Me. Look at me. I'm a leaf on a tree, hanging on and swinging in the breeze. I'm in full bloom, bright green. With my veins standing tall, I'm laying back and basking in the breeze. Look at me. My edges are crisp. I'm more than the branch I get life from. I'm a moist, supple old leaf. I mature with the seasons. I turn deep maroon red to celebrate my burgeoning maturity. Did you guys hear that? My burgeoning maturity. Sorry about that. You know, I command attention. Didn't I say that? I hold to the light and embrace the glory of life. Look at me. I fade to yellow just to display my heavenly glow. Remember Bruce Lee said that? My heavenly glow. Yeah, I'm a Bruce Lee fan. How about y'all? The green grasping my edges. My yellow represents the longevity of my life, while the green shows my youthful spirit. Look at me. I change with my moods. Green, red, yellow shadowing green, and now gray. Y'all see it, right? You can't see them? They're shining in the light. Gray. I'm a wise old leaf. My branch has gone through some things. My life reflects joy, pain, curiosity, and growth in my endurance. I am beyond the limitations that life has to offer. I have blossomed into strength and courage. And as I leave my energy behind for my rebirth, look at me. I am eternal light.
I think she took me too seriously, thought I'd be up here for a long time, too. Thank you all so much for being here today. If you or someone you know is in need of help or wishes to speak to someone, please know that you can call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK 8255 or text BRAVE to 741-741. If you purchased your tickets online and are interested in making a donation to continue This Is My Brave's work, it's as simple as looking on your phone, because they're going to send you a text. You'll receive information through a text on how to make a donation if you so choose. If you'd like to make one today, and hey, after this, who wouldn't? There's a dip jar in the lobby. Y'all know what a dip jar is? I'm not going to tell you. They just taught me what it was today. You have to go look in the lobby. I was raised Catholic. I can kind of lay on the guilt. There's lots more information in your program, and we want to thank you for your support. You know, our brave cast was able to shine a light today on a topic we don't talk about enough. And I'd like to take a quick moment to ask you, our audience, to be brave with us. And what I mean by that is, if you yourself have experienced a mental health struggle, or if you love someone who has, please stand up right now. Take a look around. We are all affected by mental health struggles, every single one of us, and if you're sitting down, I don't believe you. Simply being here today was an incredible start to building upon a movement of people who are willing to be more open and supportive to those who are struggling. You can sit down now. My gosh, sometimes I sound like a nun. We hope that you'll think of This Is My Brave and that you'll use this experience you've shared with us today as a way to start the conversation, but also keep it going. That's what it means to live brave. We'd love to talk with you in the lobby where we can gather, and we won't sell you Amway, and visit with our storytellers and sponsors. But first, give us one more round of applause as we give our bow.